Content warning. The following true stories include stalking, home invasion, a firearm threat, and a severed, decapitated deer head. Reader discretion advised. Winter muffles everything. Sound, movement, even the sense that danger is nearby. But that hush can be a cover. 3 ordinary winter nights. 3 people who left home expecting quiet and found something else instead. These are their voices. If you want more real-life horror, give this video a like and subscribe. There are more true accounts coming. Now, listen. Story 1, Quebec. I live on the edge of southern Quebec, where our road ends and the trees begin. My house sits with its back to the forest, and some years I feel like I have 2 yards, the fenced-in patio, and then, a meter or 2 beyond that, the dark line of pines. I'm hearing impaired. Loud noises don't always warn me, and small ones sometimes don't register at all. That's why my dog Monty is more than a pet. He's my eyes and ears in ways I can't be. It was one of those clear, cold days when the snow has been packed down by boots and the whole place smells like iron and pine. I took Monty along one of the side trails, a short loop I do most evenings. There's a torn blue tarp someone had draped between 2 trees a while back, maybe someone's makeshift shelter, and I always notice it. That afternoon it looked heavier with ice, fluttering slightly with the wind. There were footprints in the snow I didn't recognize, large, deep prints leading from the tarp down toward the trail. I made a mental note and kept walking. At dusk, when light slides away faster than you expect, Monty pulled at the leash like he'd found something interesting. He twisted and then froze. That's how he is. His whole body tenses when he stares. I saw a man then, standing maybe a meter off the trail. He was tall, wearing camo and charcoal snow pants. He didn't call out. He didn't wave. He just looked. Monty gave a low, insistent bark. I tried to smile and brush it off in my head, figured it was a hiker who'd come down from the woods to enjoy the last light. I put my hand on Monty's back and told him to heel, and we walked on. I fell asleep that night thinking maybe I'd been jumpy. Around 3 a.m., Monty woke me. He was at the foot of the bed, restless and growling like he had never done before. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and listened. Later, I learned my neighbor had been texting me about a lot of barking around midnight, and that there had been an officer driving up and down the road. Someone had called about unusual noise. My phone buzzed with the message, and I thought about it without fully putting the pieces together. Then I went to the sliding patio door to check why the dog had been so upset. The glass was smashed. There was a jagged hole big enough to reach through. Monty was pacing, scanning the yard. Somehow, under that thin layer of calm we live with, there was panic. I texted 911 and then called.
I put my phone on speaker because my hands were shaking. I grabbed a machete. Silly, maybe, but it was heavy and felt like an anchor, and bolted the bedroom door. I pulled blankets around my legs and sat on the floor with Monty at my feet. The whole house felt huge and hollow. I heard the patio gate creak in a way that sounded like someone stepping carefully, measuring, trying not to make a noise, but not succeeding. Then the smack of canvas on wood, a boot strike on the gate. Monty barked until his lungs sounded like they'd burst, and I could feel my heart pushing against my ribs like it was trying to escape. At one point there was a loud crash from the patio, glass, and then the dull thud, as if someone had tried the door more than once. My phone's screen lit up, an incoming text from a neighbor saying there was a man out back again. The thing I remember that night is how close he was. I could have touched him through the window if I had stood on my tiptoes and strained. I could see the outline of a figure moving across the patio, and then once, the shadow at the bedroom door. He pushed at the door and the knob rattled. I held my breath until my lungs hurt. The knob stopped moving. He did not open the door. He left. In the morning, police were there. They wrote their report. They took pictures of the smashed patio glass. They noted that the gate to the backyard had been left open. It wasn't like my gate, which usually latched and stayed latched. They searched the tree line and the trail, and then left. I've heard nothing since. No arrests, no follow-up, No knocks on my door offering to check locks or install cameras. The tarp is still there in the trees, more compressed with new snow. The footprints I'd seen remain in my head like an unfinished sentence. The worst part is how little trust I have now in ordinary routines. I used to walk the trail even after dusk. Now I stay where streetlights are bright. I keep Monty on a shorter leash. I sleep with my bedroom door locked, a knife within reach. The police did what they could that morning, which was to document and confirm that something had happened. But they couldn't find who it was. And without that, the risk feels endless. I catch myself checking patios and peering into tree lines when the wind moves the branches. The forest outside my yard used to feel like a neighbor. Now it feels like a place that holds a stranger. Then the snow settled again, white and indifferent. The silence returned like a blanket. But I know now that silence can be watching. Crunch of snow, dark like paint. Then
It was one of those snowy nights where the roads are slushy and everyone's in a hurry to get home. Dad texted us around 8, asked if he wanted him to pick up lunch for tomorrow. That's normal. He was at work. Later, after the movie, our group was hungry and wanted something to eat, so we called Dad to tell him we were bringing some sandwiches back to the car. He replied, "Be careful, girls," or something like that. He said he'd be home later, which I didn't think twice about. We drove out to the lake because there was a picnic spot there with a dock that looks over the water. The place is usually empty in winter. Skate tracks over the frozen surface, a pair of benches with frost. The phone buzzed again, Dad's number. The text said, "Come to the dock, I'm out here." We were being dumb teenagers, thinking it would be funny to drop by and surprise him. Kate and I laughed as we walked through the knee-deep snow toward the dock. We could feel the cold burning under our coats, and our breath puffed in front of our faces. When we got close, I saw someone sitting on the dock. He had his back to us, hunched over, holding a phone. At first, I thought it was Dad, because the silhouette was stocky, but then the guy swung his head, and I knew instantly it wasn't him. He held up a phone and typed. The screen flashed with our dad's name. I remember the sound, like a wet pop of snow, from when he stood up and turned. He smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes, and then started to run toward us. We ran too. We ran the stupid, fast kind of run you do when you don't want to be grabbed. Legs pumping, lungs cold, shoes slipping. He chased us down the path to the parking lot. I don't remember much about the first seconds inside the car, except for how violent my hands were on the wheel. We slammed the doors, started the engine, and left with the tire spitting ice and mud. The whole ride home felt like I was shaking in slow motion. At home, everything seemed normal until 6 hours later, when something tapped on my window. I was in my room, trying to fall asleep, and replaying every second like it was a film I couldn't turn off. At about midnight, a sound like a stone hitting glass. Then a shadow passed across my curtains. The window shattered. Glass showered across my desk and the floor. Someone had stood outside and pointed a gun at my window. There were fingerprints in the snow on the sill. I called my parents screaming, and they came running. Police came. They found a little air tag taped under the rim of one of our car tires. I remember holding that tiny plastic device, like it was an accusation written in technology. We learned later that my dad's phone had been used by someone, stolen earlier that week in a parking lot. Dad had filed a report, and the thief had sent text from his number. He used Dad's phone to talk to us like he was Dad. He used that device to get us to the dock in the first place. We had proof.
The phone was recovered in a different part of town after police traced the IMEI. The AirTag was dusted for prints, and yet no arrest. No one told us who exactly had pointed the gun at my window. We were told that the man who'd punched the window and pointed the gun hadn't been identified in a way that resulted in charges. The phone's thief was known, then not known. The whole thing felt like a gap between a clear fact, someone followed us and used tech to find us, and an empty conclusion, nobody to hold responsible. My parents tried to be calm. They said we did the right things, but I felt guilty, like I should have seen the small things, the way his messages were off, the pauses in text that should have been Dad's usual typos. I beat myself up for taking a walk to the dock with Kate. I stopped letting my sister out of my sight after dark. I checked windows twice and 3 times and set up extra lights, and the feeling of being watched lingered in the house like a draft. It's not a big drama answer. No one chased us down the street with a van, no hostage movie scene. But what mattered was the proximity. Someone had been close enough to stick a small tracking device to my car and come back to my house with a firearm. That's the thing that stays with me, the distance the technology erased. An AirTag is barely a thing, but it lets you pretend you're somebody else and follow us into places where strangers shouldn't be. I still think about the dock sometimes, the snow on the boards, the way the man's shoulder slumped like he was waiting to be recognized. I imagine the night he used Dad's phone to invite us, like it was a cruel joke. We didn't matter to him beyond being people he could manipulate to get what he wanted. The police recovered the phone and identified the AirTag. What they couldn't give us was the sense that the world had rules we could trust. That feeling doesn't go away with a returned phone. Snow kept falling. The house stayed warm, but I wasn't sure our safety did. Crunch of snow. The dark. A shallow breath. Then. Story 3. 2021. The road that ends in trees. I left my family's holiday gathering later than I should have. The snow had been steady all evening, thick and wet, clinging to the branches in big flakes. I knew the road home was a bad one, narrow, tree-lined with ditches on either side,
and still I insisted on leaving early to avoid the last of the festivities. I was the kind of person who trusted my driving and my luck. That night, luck didn't seem interested in paying attention. I slid on black ice, and there it was, the sound of metal against bark, and the hollow, immediate absence that follows an impact. My car died in a pocket of deep snow near a stand of woods. I pulled my coat tighter and tried to call for help, but the signal was patchy. I had a blanket, a thermos, and a slowly growing dread. At first, I thought the other noises were wildlife. The woods make weird sounds in winter. Branches creak. Ice breathes.
But then I heard wet slurping noises that didn't belong to animals. Footsteps, boots, circled the car. I have a vivid memory of boot prints in the snow that went around the vehicle like they were walking a pattern. Circle, circle, circle. There were drops of something dark in the snow, wet and shining, leading away toward the tree line. I almost convinced myself it was car fluid at first, then the smell cut through. Iron and something older. I walked toward the prints because I kept thinking I could find the owner, someone who would tell me what had happened. The boot prints tracked into the trees, and then the open white space of the clearing hit me, the animal laid out in the snow. I won't get into detail beyond what it was, a deer, dead and clearly butchered. The head was separated. It was a scene that made my skin clamp down. I stood there feeling a deep and primal nausea, like my stomach had become a fist. I turned to go back, and when I came around the car, I saw it. The deer's severed head placed right on the driver's seat. Whoever had done this had come up to my car, opened my door, and set that thing there like an offering or a warning. I don't know which. I don't know why. A pair of headlights appeared down the road just then. I ran toward them shouting until my throat burned. By the time my dad's truck pulled up, whatever hands had been in the clearing were gone. The carcass was gone. The head was gone. There were only drag marks and a trail of blood that faded into the woods. The footprints that had gone into the trees had not quite matched the ones that left. There was a kind of erasure that made it feel like someone had decided to tidy up. We didn't call the police in the way most people would expect. I didn't file a report. Maybe I should have. Maybe the story would read differently if we had handed it over to someone in uniform and let them stitch the facts into a case. But that night, I wanted nothing more than to get my family and my car as far away from that clearing as possible. Tow truck came the next day. People speculated. Animal hoarder, illegal hunter, someone with a grudge. But I know better than to try to name motives. The only solid thing I could say was what I had seen. Prints, a dead animal, blood, and then the head where my seat should be. There's a sound I will never forget. The sound of snow being disturbed when something heavy is dragged across it. It isn't loud, not like metal on glass, but it carries a weight. It replays in my head like a loose record that skips at the same spot. People ask me if I thought the person was human or something else. That's not the right question. The right question is, did they mean to scare me, or did they mean me harm? There's no answer. I left the scene with my hands shaking, blood on my boots, and a kind of knowledge that I'd been in the presence of hands that did things I wasn't meant to see.
Afterward, the truck was fixed, the car assessed, the tidy explanations offered and dismissed. But I started to check the woods more closely when I drove by them. I stopped taking that shortcut home. I told myself tiny things. Don't stop on the shoulder, don't pull over for strangers. But I also knew these were the sort of rules that make people feel safe without actually changing anything about what could happen. What I keep thinking about is the intention behind placing that head on the seat. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. It was meant to send a message toward me or toward someone else. A warning? A ritual? I will never know. The headlights showed up just in time, or maybe too late. Someone saw the car, someone found me, but the evidence I wanted, the body, the prints, the full story, was gone in the gray light of morning, leaving me with a question and an ache. That uncertainty is worse than anything else, because it has no shape, and it follows you when you close your eyes. Crunch of snow, a handprint in the pane. The road stretches black and cold. Then, coda, what stays with you. 3 nights, 3 ways winter rearranged ordinary life into an unthinkable scenario. A man on a patio at 3 a.m., a stranger texting like your father from a lakeside dock, and a deer's head on a car seat after a storm. The specifics differ. Quebec, Illinois, a roadside in 2021, but the pattern is the same. Cold quiet, the sense that the world has paused, then the sudden interruption that proves silence is not safety. Each of these accounts ends without tidy justice. The patio glass was smashed and the man vanished into the tree line.
Ember and Kate's attacker used an AirTag and a stolen phone and left the family with a return device but no closure. The person who placed an animal's head on a driver's seat never left a clear trail to follow. That unresolved ending is part of the terror, the knowledge that sometimes danger leaves a scene with no one to answer to. What also ties them together is the violation of ordinary spaces: a backyard, a dock, the driver's seat of a car. These are places we expect to be mundane, safe, routine. Winter and its hush made them softer targets in some ways. The lack of people outside, the assumption that tracks and snow tell a simple story. But tracks can be misread, and silence can be staged. Technology shows up here too, not as a savior but as a tool. An AirTag taped under a tire erased distance. A stolen phone translated into a fake invitation. Tracking used to find a house. Small, cheap things that let someone become close without announcing themselves. The police did what they could in pieces. They recovered a phone, they logged a smashed window, they photographed evidence. But the system's limitations left gaps. Those gaps are not always cold to people. They're dangerous. Trauma lingers after these encounters. The Quebec narrator won't walk the trail at dusk.
Ember carries a guilt that mixes with hypervigilance. She rechecks windows and sits up late, waiting for the next sound. The driver from 2021 changed routes and sleeps with the headlights focused away from the trees now. The change in routine is a protective architecture of small rituals, locking doors, shorter walks, friend safety checks, that no longer feels like enough, but works as a way to sleep. I'm not offering advice on how to handle an intruder or to track a stolen device. The point of these stories is not to teach tactics. They're testimonies. They're warnings without prescriptions. They show how ordinary nights can bend into fear, how a life can be shifted by a single event that leaves no neat ending. If you have a winter story, something that unsettled you on a quiet road or in a still backyard, share it in the comments. Sometimes telling it out loud is the only way to move a little of the weight off your chest. And if these stories matter to you, subscribe for more true accounts. We bring the voices forward so the quiet doesn't go unrecorded. The last thing I'll say is this: winter hush has a smell. It's not just cold air. It's a kind of listening. That listening can keep you safe, or it can hide the sound of someone coming too close. Be careful out there, but remember that the answer is not always to be braver or smarter. Sometimes it's just to bear witness, to tell what happened so that we all know that danger can arrive where we least expect it, and that unresolved fear is still a real thing.